Happy New Year and welcome to Business Boot Camp for Freelance Writers. I'm Kevin Corbley, and you guessed it, today, because it's early January, I'm going to be talking about New Year's resolutions or goals. And I believe you should set New Year's resolutions or have goals for the year, both personally and professionally. So every year, I actually have sometimes up to half a dozen New Year's resolutions that I set for myself. And I'm a big believer, as I've mentioned before, in SMART resolutions. I didn't make that up. I read that actually in several articles. You see that around these days. But that means your resolution needs to be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time sensitive or time constrained. In other words, you're going to achieve these things in a year or a month or whatever it's going to be. Of those 5 things, I think the most important is definitely specific. You have to be specific, right? You can't just say, hey, I'm going to lose some weight this year. You got to say, I'm going to lose 10 pounds. And the same is true in business. You have to be very specific about your goals, what you want to achieve for the year. Let me tell you what my typical New Year's resolutions are for my business. First, every single year I set a revenue goal, right? An earning goal for myself. And it's always something that's attainable, realistic, but it's a specific number. Usually I base it on the previous year. I see how that year went, see if there was a trend, a good trend at the end of the year. And, pretty typical 10%. 15%, maybe if things look really good, 20% increase from one year to the next is going to be my goal. And I'm going to come back to revenue in a second because I think it's so important. But just here's some other things that I have goals for. Every year I look at the numbers of clients that I have and the types of clients. And I decide, maybe I need some new clients. And typically, statistically speaking, you're probably going to lose about 10 to 15% of your business anyway. That might be 1 or 2 clients. But the way I look at that is that I'm going to say, hey, I need a couple new clients this year, but I get very specific, and I actually have a reason for that because I've been working in the same niche market for quite a while. I have to be really careful about conflict of interest, working for 2 companies that compete with each other. So I get very targeted about what kind of companies I want to go after. Just to give you an example, in the market I work in, there's a certain segment of the market that has been really hot for the last 2 years, and I want to find a client in that segment because I don't have one right now. So I've got some targets in mind. And by the way, I kind of made it easier on myself this year. In terms of new clients, I put in 2 proposals right in December, which is very typical for the coming year, for new work for this year. And hopefully that's going to pay off in terms of 2 new clients. I'm hoping to get 2 or 3. Specifically, by the way, I want to get a retainer client. Retainers, that's where I tend to make most of my money. So I've got my sights on closing at least 1 new retainer deal this year, and it looks like I'm in pretty good shape to do that. The other thing I do is I like to set goals for travel because I love to travel. So my goal, and this has been a repeating goal for the past several years, is I'm going to make a trip in the coming year, preferably to a conference because that's where I do a lot of new business development. And I'm going to have one of my clients pay for it. And actually, this is already a done deal, so maybe I should decide on 2 for this year. I've already got a client who's retained my services to help them out at a conference coming up, and I know I'll have plenty of free time to do some prospecting on the side. So I think I'm going to go for two travel conferences in the coming year that'll be paid for by a client. And let me go back. I said I wanted to talk about revenue a little bit. Let me talk to you about strategizing for revenue. Let's just say that maybe last year you made $40,000 with your freelance writing business, and you want to go for maybe $50,000 this year. That's a 25% increase, probably doable. But break it down a little bit. So you want to make $10,000 more. How are you going to do that? Instead of looking at the whole big 50,000 number, look at that 10,000 and say, well, maybe you charge 2,000 to write an article. So that's 5 articles. You got to figure out a way to find clients to have you write 5 more articles. Maybe you can go to 5 of your existing clients and have each of them assign you one more article in the coming year. Or maybe you'll mix it up. Maybe you'll do 3 new articles, and you'll do, say, 5 or 6 press releases, depending on how much you charge for a press release, maybe $1,000 each, whatever the number is. So break it down. Get really specific with, okay, you're not just going to make 10 grand more in the coming year, but you're gonna write X number of articles, maybe this many more blogs, this many more press releases, but get really specific. And so what it all comes down to, let me just kind of wrap it up here, is that with your New Year's resolutions, your business goals, whatever you want to call them, you need to be specific, because once you figure out what you want to achieve, then you can figure out how to achieve it. In other words, that's the strategy of doing business. Great. Well, hey, I hope this was helpful, and I hope you have a great new year. I hope you make your New Year's resolutions. If you'd like to read more about getting started in freelance writing, I hope you'll read my blog, which you can find at www.freelancerbootcamps.com. And you can also follow me on Twitter at WritingBizGuru. So, hey, Happy New Year.